Hi everyone, this is Helen from Helen Westwood Maths. Just jumping on to do a quick revision video today around averages, but specifically thinking about our averages from frequency tables. So before we launch into a couple of examples, I'm going to do one where we've got a frequency table and then a frequency table where we've got group data and working out our averages. But it's a really good opportunity for students to just reflect on their 4 types of averages, what they are, how to calculate them. I've just put the letters here as a bit of a prompt. So just making sure that we can remember those, which I'll just talk through in just a second. You can always pause here. Your GCSE Maths student can just have a go at writing those down. Firstly, the basic averages themselves, and then thinking about what do we have to remember when we're calculating these averages for frequency tables. As I say, I'm going to talk through a couple of examples. So let's see what we've remembered. Okay, so we've got our mean, which is where we work out the total and then divide by how many. The how many, when it's in a frequency table, as we're going to see, is the sum of the frequency. The mode is the most common value. So when we're looking at our frequency table, we're looking for which value has the highest frequency. The median, remember, is the middle value when the data is in order. Most frequency tables have our data sort of in order, but also we're looking for that middle value. I'm going to show you how we can look at a running total with the frequencies to help us identify where the middle is. And then to calculate our range, we do the highest minus the lowest. Remember that range is a measure of spread. It's a measure of consistency rather than an average, but we often calculate it at the same time. Okay, so here is our first frequency table. So we've got ages in years, and then we've got the frequency. And then we're going to think about how could we work out those 4 averages that we've just revised. So starting with the mode, which so it can be with one of the most straightforward one because we're just looking where we've got the highest frequency. Okay, so we've got the highest frequency there of 8, but we've got to be careful not to write down 8 as our answer, because that 8 refers to that we've got 13 children with an age of, sorry, we've got 8 children with an age of 13 years. So it's 13 years that has the highest frequency, is the age that comes up the most. So moving on to our median next. Now we can see from our table, it's in order of size with the youngest age up to the oldest age. So we're thinking about where the middle might be. And I'm going to show you in red how we can do a running total similar to our cumulative frequency to help us to work that out. So we've got the first 6 people in that first row. If we then look at how many people we've got in the first 2 rows, we add the 6 and the 7, we've got 13 people. In the first 3 rows, we've got our first 21 people, and then that goes up to 25. So we know that the total frequency, you would also get that by adding up the frequency column there would be 25. So what does that mean for our median? So our median is the value in the middle. If we split our 25 values into 2 halves, we could have 12 and 12, and then we would have the 13th value, which is the median. So when we look at where the 13th value would be, that would be the last value in the second row. So that gives us a median of 12. You can always write out the list of numbers to check that. Less easy to do if it's a frequency table with a high frequency. Then looking at our range. So our range is our highest take lowest. Be careful, don't do this with the frequencies. Our highest age is 14. Our youngest age is 11. So we have a range of 3. And then finally, the last one we're going to calculate is our mean. So I'm going to shift into my purple for doing our workings. So what we've got to remember is we want the total of all of the ages of all of the people divided by how many. So we've got 6 11-year-olds. So we're going to do 6 times 11 to give us 66. We've got 7 12-year-olds, which gives us 84. 8 13-year-olds, that gives us 104. 4 14-year-olds, that gives us 56. And then we want to add up all of those ages for those workings we've done just there, which gives us 310. and then we need to divide by how many. Now, be careful not to fall in the trap of dividing by 4 because you can see 4 rows in the table. We need to divide by 25. If you did 310 divided by 4, you'd get a mean of 77, which doesn't seem a very good average based on the data we've got here. So remember, really good exam technique is to always ask yourself, does my answer seem reasonable? And if we do 310 divided by 25, we get an answer of 12.4. So they are our 4 averages for our first frequency table. So moving on to this example, you can see this time we're working out our averages, but this time we have a grouped frequency table. Okay, so we can still work out our modal group or our group containing the mode, our class containing the median, and we will work out an estimate for the mean. And I'll talk about why it's an estimate in a second. So let's start with our modal group. Of course, before I talk through this, you can pause this. Your GCSE student can have a go at this question and then check with what I go through. So with your modal group, we're looking for our highest frequency. So our highest frequency is the group where the weight is greater than 10, but less than or equal to 20. So we can identify the modal group because it's the group with the highest frequency. So it's the group that comes up most. Notice it's not an individual value, but it's the highest frequency. Okay. Next, when we're looking for our median in a similar way, we're looking for the class that contains the median. It's not going to give us our median value, but it's the class containing the median. And just like we did with the previous example, we can just work with a bit of a running total there that I've done in red. We can see that in total, we've got a total frequency of 10. So again, if we think about how we could split that up, we could split those 10 values into 5 and 5. So the position of the median is going to be between the 5th and 6th value. Remember, when you've got an even number of values, the median is going to be between the 2 middle ones. So we're thinking about where is our 5th and 6th value? So that is going to be just here. So that means that our group, again, the class containing the median just happens to be the same as the one containing the mean. It's where the weight is greater than 10 or less than or equal to 20. So then our last average we're going to do is always talked about as being an estimate of the mean. And the reason why it's an estimate is because when we look at that first row and those 2 values, we know that the weight of those 2 values is between 0 and 10, but we don't know exactly what those 2 values are. So what we do is we use a midpoint to represent those 2 values. We're going to say those 2 weigh 5 grams. The same thing with the next one. We don't know the value of those 4 in the second row. We're going to use a midpoint of 15. And then just completing the midpoints for the other groups. So when we come to work out the mean, what we're going to do is we're going to do the midpoint times by the frequency. So to start off with, we're going to do 5 times 2, which gives us 10. Just moving my arrow that I use for median there. Next, we're going to do 15 times 4, which gives us 60. 25 times 3. And then 35 times 1. So then to get our total of all of the weights, we're going to add together our 10, 60, 75 and 35, which gives us 180. And then our estimate for the mean will be that 180, which we've worked out as our estimate of the total weight of all the objects, divided by 10. So that gives us an estimate of the mean of 18 grams. Okay, so hopefully that was a helpful revision of our averages and how we can apply those for frequency tables. Have a great Easter break, everyone. I'll see you online soon.